Okay, guys, so it looks like all of our candidates are here. So this meeting is going to be recorded. It is also going to be live streamed on YouTube. So if you need to leave at any point, but you still want to have it on in the background or keep watching, it will be available on the SSMU's YouTube. So I'm going to start the recording now.
Recording in progress.
So first we'll introduce ourselves and then we'll get right into the debate and have the candidates speak. My name is Jalen Barth. I am the Chief Electoral Officer and my pronouns are she, her.
Hi everyone, my name is Anthony Farthing. I'm the Deputy Electoral Officer and my pronouns are he, him. And thank you everyone for coming tonight.
Yeah, so we'll just say a little thing right off the bat. First off, there will be a point where we ask for audience questions. At that point, we invite you to message either me or Anthony with your question or use the raise hand function. We do ask that everyone stays civil. We're all students here where we all want a good election and we all want what's best for the student body. So we ask there's no discriminatory language, no attacking any specific candidates or anything of that manner. So yeah, everyone just try and keep this friendly and let's have a really good debate. I will also be timing the candidates for this debate. And so I will let you guys know how that will work once we get to the timing page. But first, we're just going to do a quick land acknowledgement. So the SSMU is located on land which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst Indigenous peoples, including the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe nations. The SSMU honors, recognizes, and respects these nations as the traditional stewards of the lands and waters on which we meet today.
Alors, l'Université McGill est sur un emplacement qui a longtemps servi de lieu de rencontre et d'échange entre les peuples autochtones, y compris les nations Haudenosaunee et Anishinaabe. McGill honore, reconnaît et respecte ces nations à titre d'intendant traditionnel des terres et de l'eau sur lesquelles nous nous réunissions aujourd'hui.
Okay, so with that, we're just going to get straight into the debate. So this is the order in which the candidates will speak. So how the kind of order is going to work is first the candidate is going to get a question from the current candidate. And every candidate has a minute to reply. So how the timing is going to work is that you will have 1 minute. When you have 10 seconds remaining, I will do a little emote in my window, and that means you have 10 seconds remaining. When your time has elapsed, I will unmute yourself and just say that your time has elapsed. So after every candidate is going to be asked one question from an exec, then they are going to be asked a question submitted by the SSMUnion. Then they will be asked questions that we received from online, and then the audience. And there will also be an opportunity for candidate discussion. We ask that all candidates remain friendly and civil and that they respect the timing. If any candidate has any internet or connectivity problems, that's no problem. We will pause and help you guys work around that issue. So because we know this can be a bit of a long meeting and we want to make sure that we can get through everyone and not keep you guys too long, we're going to hop into things right away.
All right, so first up, we have the position of VP Finance, which this year we have Marco Pizarro as our candidate. As Jalen mentioned, Marco, you'll begin with a 1 minute opening statement, and then one executive question, followed by a question from the SSMUnion, 2 online questions, 2 audience questions, and then a closing statement of 1 minute. An audience, feel free to enter your questions in the chat. Only Jalen and I can see your chat messages, and rest assured your questions will be anonymous and your name will not be given. So without further ado, Marco, if you would like to make your opening statement.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Hello everyone, so my name is Marco. I'm a second-year student studying in economics and political science. And I would like to run for VP Finance with many principles of democracy, decentralization, transparency. I think that we have an opportunity today because we understand the problem, so I hope to be a part of that change.
Great. So from the current VP Finance, SMU is often plagued by the issue where excellent ideas fail because of improper execution. As VP Finance, you're often responsible to guarantee that logistics, finances, and careful planning is addressed prior to a plan being approved. How will you ensure that plans are implemented properly, and why should the student body trust your ability to raise these issues when they come up?
I think that there is two main ideas to answer this question. The first one is myself. I had some little experience being VP Finance Treasurer back in France for summer camps. So I think I already have a little understanding of finances, and I hope that with the training of May, I will be better and to address plans for approval. And they will have a decentralization of power and trying to create a new instances for decision making in order not to be the only one that will have to address budget plans, but to decentralize decision making.
Okay. So from the SSMUnion, as collective bargaining comes to a close, and as we move further into the implementation of the 5-year plan, SMU's finances are changing. What are your plans for these structural changes to SMU's finances, and how do you intend to work with the SSMUnion to implement them?
As I said just before, I think that today, when I talked with many clubs or services, one of the main problem with finances today was that it was taking a very long time. The process was very complicated, and I think we have to streamline the funding process in order a lot of guests coming and being paid 6 months after they venue, and I think that is a bit awkward for us. And so I think that is one main idea is to streamline the funding process, and the other one is to decentralize it in order to make it more faster and not to have the same issues we had before.
Next, we have an online form question, which reads, prices at GERTS resemble those of a private for-profit business rather than a student bar. Given the importance of GERTS as a place to meet others on campus, what would you do as a candidate to address these pricing concerns?
So I know that prices are quite high for a student board. I think everyone reaction to that is, oh, I don't understand why the prices are so high. So my first action would be to work with the previous VP Finance, Eric, to really understand why the GERTS looks like more of a for-profit business, and then it would be to address this issue in order to have the lower prices possible for it to be a place where a lot of students can come, because we know that the price is a good way to create a hub for students. So it would be first to understand the problem and then to do everything possible to lower the prices.
All right, next from the online form as well. A lot of students are concerned about how high the SMU membership fee has become. How would you address this concern?
I've heard a lot of people complaining about the fees of SMU membership. I think one thing that would be first very interesting to do is to make students understand where the money goes, and then to not be the one that decides the fee, but to create smoothly, to ask students to have to debate on the membership fees, and then to implement what the students have decided for the next years.
Okay. Thank you for your answer. Anthony, sorry, could you just go back to the presentation? Sorry, it went off briefly. So now we are going to take questions from the audience. So if anyone wants to either use the raise hand function or directly message me and Anthony, if there are no questions from the audience, we will take more that were submitted online. Okay, so seeing no audience questions, I will ask one that was submitted online from students. So one question that was asked was that how individual executive candidates are going to work to hold peers accountable for their actions.
Sorry, can you ask again how are we going to be more accountable to our actions?
How will you ensure that as an executive group, that everyone will be held accountable, your fellow executives?
So in order to answer that question, today, the student union is a very top-down union with executive having a lot of power, and it's very hard to make them accountable to their action. And I think that is a real problem. In order to fix that problem, there is the democratization manifesto that really talks about why this is a problem and how to resolve it. And it says that we should have a more grassroots democracy in the university. And to do that, we should have more general assembly in order for the executive not to be having all the power, but to be more the coordinators, and so that they would be a lot more accountable to the action. And by having more democracy, I think we would go to us being more accountable to our action, because this is a real problem from the past years.
Sorry. For your last question, someone in the audience has asked, SSMU finances are considered confidential. How do you wish to be more transparent with these finances?
Personally, yeah, transparency. I think that if we want students to be more involved in their union, they should be more aware of what's happening. And I really advocate for the more transparency possible. I know not everyone agrees, but I will for sure fight for more transparency on the VP finance. And in order, because I think there is no, in order for the students to be more involved and to be more aware of what's happening.
Okay, thank you for your answers, Marco. We'll now move on to the next candidate.
Marco, would you like to make a 1-minute closing statement?
My apologies.
Yeah, I really believe for what do I want to be as a VP Finance, because VP Finance doesn't seem to be the most exciting job. I really believe that we should all fight for more democracy. I think the union is potential in order for students to fight for what they believe. We have so much money, so much power. So I really hope that for the coming months and years, we will be able to change and to have a more democratic university in order to and less toxic environment in order to fight for what we really believe. And so that's why I'm running.
Okay, great, thank you, Marco. So next, we'll move on to the VP University Affairs. And again, it'll be the same format as the VP Finance, with opening statements, then question from the current executive, SSMUnion question, true form questions, and 2 audience questions, followed by a 1-minute closing statement. And this year's VP University Affairs candidate is Mr. Gary Yang.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Carrie, and I'm excited to be running for SSMU Vice President University Affairs. I'm currently in my 4th year majoring in neuroscience, and I believe I have the experience necessary to be a successful UA. Associate Center in my 1st year, and I'm in Science Center. My platform and policies are centered around bringing back old initiatives, continuing to push for academic wellness, increasing knowledge around student rights and responsibilities, And I also want to increase the autonomy of marginalized affairs portfolios, advocating for increased accessibility and improving communication between SMU and faculty associations. I strongly believe in creating a culture of pragmatism and compromise, and I believe I have the skill set necessary to push forward student advocacy at a university-wide level. Thank you all for coming, and I'm excited to talk more about my candidates.
All right, so firstly, we have a question from the current VP University Affairs. Does McGill as an institution care about its students? If not, what should we be doing that we aren't already doing to hold the university accountable?
That's a really great question. So although McGill tries to paint itself as an institution that actually cares, we see time and time again that they're not listening to students. And it's important that we step up and that we continue pushing forward. I strongly believe that there are a lot of mechanisms that we can use to keep the university more accountable. And that's a lot of grassroots activism and in student body to become more engaged and actually start stepping up and standing out. I believe that by consolidating efforts, we can create a cohesive unit and a cohesive force where you have students from all different societies and all different faculties in all different areas coming together to actually address the issues that McGill has. I believe through collective action, that's the best way we can hold the university accountable because there are power in numbers. That's our greatest strength as students and as a student body. Our greatest strength is the amount of people we have and the amount of people who care. And as long as we can continue to keep people motivated and actually care about these issues, I believe that we can truly keep people.
All right, next from the SSMUnion, they ask, what do you know about the on-campus unions other than SSMUnion, and how do you intend to support them in your role as VP University Affairs?
Yeah, of course. So unions aren't necessarily my forte. A lot of my strength and understanding come from governance at the university-wide level. So more Senate things and also with more faculty associations. But I do believe student unions play a very important and big role on campus. I believe that a lot of activism that's done is believe that I will continue to support them either through funding or through doing a lot of work in terms of administrative and logistic work, because oftentimes like those are often the biggest barriers towards putting time towards things. And it's my job to be able to support unions in achieving their goals and pushing forward their ideas.
All right, next we have our first online forum question, which is, how will you mediate policy direction disagreements between the McGill administration and the student body?
Of course, I'm a believer in compromise, and that's something that I always try to go for. I believe in taking a diplomatic approach where we actually hear all perspectives and we try to push forward in a cohesive way. So that's something that I'm already trying to do. I'm trying to create like healthy working relationships with members of the McGill administration, because if you seem as if you're willing to compromise, they're generally more willing to compromise and they're willing to push forward with you. But I'm also not afraid to stand up for student rights, because a lot of times students who try to compromise are often taken advantage of, and I'm willing to continue pushing forward. I am a strong fighter for student rights and I'm a strong fighter for students, and I believe that if there are disagreements, I will try to compromise. I'll try my best to ensure that we can have all voices take part. But if they're not, there are other mechanisms in which I can try to use. There is, for example, the media. We can use more grassroots movements. There are several mechanisms in place that can be used to mediate disagreements and push forward student beliefs.
And then next from the online forum, we have, what are the most important student concerns that you intend to bring the McGill administration?
So in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, I think a really important student concern right now is just academic wellness and mental health. I believe that this has not long been neglected by the university, and I'm currently doing work in addressing student wellness and mental health. I believe that that work, if continued, would create a lot of change. Along with student health, I believe like the environment at McGill is not conducive to learning, and there are a lot of concerns just in terms of the culture around equity and accessibility. And I strongly believe in pushing, such as by advocating for more audiovisual equipment or providing like more viable alternatives if McGill is unwilling. Another thing that I believe is a really big concern is just how OSD note takers aren't paid. And I believe like bringing that back where established that could also be another really important thing. And these are things that I would bring forward to McGill administration and try to push them forward in terms of equity, mental health, and accessibility.
All right, so now we'll move on to audience questions. If you have any questions, you can feel free to send them in the chat through either Jalen or I, or just in general, and we'll ask them to Carrie.
So the first audience question that we received is, what are the skill sets that you believe that you have that will help you fulfill the role of the VP University Affairs?
Of course. So firstly, I'm quite knowledgeable about the governance mechanisms and the governance structure. I was an associate center in my first year and I learned a lot then. I'm currently the student science center and I've learned a lot about the mechanisms and the inner workings of McGill. I know a lot about the university committees. I know how to reach people of upper admin, and I actually do have healthy for admin. I've actually just met a few hours earlier, and I know how to work with them, and I know sort of what they're like and what sort of ideas they have. And I believe that this would help me be very adaptable and push ideas forward. I also am quite involved in MUN, and I've done MUN for like a large portion of my life. And from that, I learned how to be very diplomatic and how to take a very collaborative approach. I'm always willing to compromise, but I'm also willing to stand up for student rights and student beliefs. And I'm willing to fight to ensure that our rights and our voices are represented at those tables and that we have a seat.
Thank you. We have a second audience question. At the start of the semester, the SSMU published a statement about in-person learning, which many students didn't agree with. If McGill doesn't care about its students, is it right to say that the SSMU does care about its members, and how will we reflect that?
Yeah, I strongly believe that the SSMU does a good job in trying to at least reflect, or next year will for sure. Because I believe that we do need to establish communication, because a lot of times that these issues might have a clear communication, especially from like SSMU to the student body, to faculty associations, and to departments. And I believe that creating better channels of communication in which people understand and people learn and people are able to express their opinions and their voices from the bottom up, and also from the top down, we're able to tell them what we're sort of fighting for and what sort of policies we're trying to bring, would be very helpful. Because a lot of times like these sort of things happen because of miscommunication, and that's something that's very core and very central to me. Ensuring that the SSMU can communicate properly with the students and that students can communicate properly back with the SSMU, so that we can continue fighting for all students and not. And I believe that by creating more avenues, such as through listservs, or such as through creating like group chats with like faculties and departments, we can actually start creating those positive channels in which information can be disseminated, and which us as student leaders can create policies and create initiatives that actually fight for students at a higher level.
Right. Thank you, Carrie. Now, if you'd like to make your 1-minute closing statement.
Of course. So I hope throughout a portion of the debate that you learned a lot more about me and what I sort of am advocating for. I really want to revive old initiatives, such as allowing students who do well in their SU courses to actually count that towards their grades, and bringing back associate centers. I really am strongly committed towards academic wellness advocacy and trying to push forward academic wellness plans at the university level. I want to increase knowledge around student rights and partnering with VP academics at faculty levels and department levels to ensure that we can disseminate information about student rights and responsibilities so that everybody actually has access and people sort of know their role is. I also want to expand autonomy, the Black Affairs portfolio, the Indigenous Affairs portfolio, and the Francophone Affairs portfolio. And I want to ensure that I'm a good ally. I also want to advocate for accessibility, ensure that OSC note takers are played, or at least provide viable alternatives if that isn't the case. And I want to improve communication and collective efforts so there is no redundant work. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. So moving on to our next position, which is that of VP Internal, which this year is being contested by Jazz Kaur in the top left, Kat Williams in the top right, and Ananya Seth at the bottom.
We'll just take a quick minute to pin everybody. Sorry, Zoom can get a little bit slow, but we'll get.
I think we're still missing.
Okay, we got everyone.
Okay, great. So the format for this will be a little different than previous, obviously, as now there's there's more interaction between the candidates. But we'll start with an opening statement from each candidate of 1 minute, followed by an executive question that will be posed to all candidates, which they will all have an opportunity to respond to. Next we'll have the candidate discussion, which with one question each, which the candidate will be allowed a 1 minute. The candidates will be able to ask each other questions, and that candidate they're posing the question to will be given a 1 minute response, as well as the third candidate will get a 1 minute response, while they will then get a 30-second rebuttal, followed by a SSMUnion question of 1 minute response per candidate, and online questions and audience questions are proposed to everyone. I feel like I didn't explain the candidate discussion part great, so if there's any confusion, please let me know. But if not, we'll start with Jazz's opening statement.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jazz. I go by she, her pronouns. I'm currently in my 3rd year studying sociology and psychology. In a nutshell, my platform aims to make the SSMU more approachable, more accountable, more engaging, more equitable, and last but not least, more transparent. In doing so, I focus on the 5 pillars of the internal portfolio. First, being effective in regular communication. This can be through listservs, social media platforms. Second, inclusive and diverse events, especially given that we have such a large body of students. It would be interesting to have diverse and inclusive events that are for current as well as incoming students. Focusing on providing accommodations and accessibilities for first-year students. Fourth, advocating for bilingual accessibility on campus as well as within the SSMU. Last but not least, building a strong network between the McGill alumni as well as the current students. As a result of these pillars, I hope to make the SSMU more accessible, as well as provide a platform that allows for students.
Has now elapsed. Thank you. We will now ask Ananya to present her opening statement.
Hi everyone, I am Ananya and I'm super excited to be running for your VP internal this year. I plan to make SSMU a safe, comfortable, and accessible society for the entire student body. My platform includes 4 aspects primarily, the first of which is improving transparency and communications between SSMU and the student body. I'll make this happen through increased social media presence, increased use of the University Center, and an improved listserv. Secondly, advocating for first years and international students by making sure to understand their needs and experiences and conducting special events through the SSPN. The third part of my platform is advocating for students' mental health by introducing same-day single-session counseling at the Student Wellness Hub for anyone who needs immediate help, as well as a mandatory mental health first aid training session in order to equip McGill students to be reliable peer supporters. Finally, I want to create something called a food bank, which is a service for students by students, and I'd love to elaborate on all these points during the Q&A.
Next, Kat, if you'd like to do your opening statement.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Kat. I go by she, they pronouns. I'm a 30th psychology student. And my campaign in a nutshell is basically that I've always had such a passion for ensuring that people have the best possible time they can. And particularly in this weird 4 years that we're all going through university, where this is kind of a time we can let ourselves do everything and explore every kind of aspect that we can get involved in. And it's something that I definitely want to work on in the position of VP. Engaging communication with student body and opening up all those corridors for students to get engaged in the hundreds of opportunities that SSMU has to offer that I feel like I rated. And just that.
All right, great. So we'll start with the executive questions section. So from the current VP internal, they ask, one of the ways in which SSMU has been said to be lacking is its commitment to transparency. As the Vice President in charge of communications, how do you plan on increasing SSMU's transparency with students? And Jazz, if you'd like to start, and then we'll follow with Ananya and Kat.
Would it be okay if I went last instead?
Sure, Ananya, would you like to go first instead?
Of course. So, as I said, I want to aim on improving transparency through an increased social media presence, which includes more takeovers, Q&A sessions, live sessions, Google Forms, etc. And I also want to make our YouTube channel more active by posting daily activities, problems, and the routine of the SSMU on it. There also will be an improved listserv that is more accountable and informative for the operations at SSMU, with a different section showcasing everything that we've been working on and how it's relevant to the student body, and another particularly for student grievances through which they can contact me directly and anonymously with their concerns. This will give students hands-on knowledge on our operations and let them know what's going on. I also hope to achieve this by encouraging higher use of the University Center for events, activities, and study sessions now that the University Center is functional after a long time. Also, working closely with the VP Student Life, I can make this happen and improve transparency by allowing students to interact informally with us and hence bridge the gap between us and various other student groups. Lastly, I want to make others
Time has
feel
elapsed. Thank you.
Kat, if you'd like to answer next.
Sure. So in terms of transparency, there's a couple of different avenues that I would like to expand on as VP internal. One particularly being that making SMU executives a lot more approachable and easily engageable and accessible to students, and decreasing that gap of power and balance between the SMU exec and student body. And through that, then I feel like increasing methods of communication and not just using current methods we have, like the listserv and social media, but creating whole new ideas. For example, in my campaign, I would love to create an app specifically that I feel like is something, especially our age group, we use every single day. We go on our phone a lot, and that's a method that I think would be much more approachable, much more accessible for a larger amount of students. Because if we're being honest, not that many people read listservs. And I think through this, we can try to also increase in transparency between highlighting what specific services related to SMU and what specific related to McGill. And this is such an issue that I've noticed. Okay.
All right, and finally, Jazz.
Well, first of all, thank you so much to Sarah for the question. And I want to start off by saying that in recent times at SMU, there's been a lot of debate about what counts as confidential. And I think this is what creates the debate about transparency and making sure that SMU is more transparent. In doing so, I would kind of work towards having a binding document, maybe something in the internal regulations or the Constitution that give us an outline of what constitutes as confidential information, what policies, what matters constitute as not confidential and can be shared. In a way, if there is this understanding of what is confidential and what isn't, we're able to provide SMU members with much more information. And this can be done at the ledge level as well as the level of board of directors. In a way, you're able to identify, segments and sections that correspond to, that need to be hidden and differentiate them from those that can be shared, and have a streamlined process to ensure that the information that we pass is,
Your time has elapsed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
So now we will have the SSMUnion question. This time we will start with Kat, then do Jazz, and finish with Anya.
Am I wrong with that? We have a question for each of the candidates first.
Jillian, you're muted.
Sorry. I think the slide might not be showing up. Is the reason?
Yeah, I'll just.
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you for catching that, Kat. So yeah, I'll just re-go over the format of this because it can be a little confusing, and just want to make sure everyone's aware. So essentially, you will all get a chance to pose a question to the other two candidates. Those candidates will both get a minute each to answer, and then you will finish it off, the question poser, with a 30-second rebuttal. We will start with Kat posing a question first, then we will have Jazz pose a question, and finally, Ananya, you will pose the last question. Are there any questions before we begin? Okay, then Kat, you can pose your question to the other two candidates.
All right, thank you. So my question for you guys is, are you going to deny and how you deal with the power inequality divide between SMU execs and the general McGill student population that might create a distance and accessibility for students to feel like they can approach and talk to execs and that you can relate to that issues from a position of power?
Jazz, if you would like to respond, you have a minute.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Could we have the question in the chat? I think it was a little too long for me to understand in one go.
For accessibility, Kat, would you be able to send that to me and then I can send it to? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I will send it to both of you. Apologies for the delay. Okay, Jazz, you have the question. Feel free to start whenever you're ready. Okay, apologies. Yes, I see that, yeah. I think there's just an issue in copying and pasting on Zoom. So Jazz, can I read the question out slowly to you if that's okay?
Yeah, that works.
Are you going to recognize and how will you deal with the power inequality divide between SSMU executives and the general McGill student population, as this might create a distance and inaccessibility for students who feel like they can't approach and talk to execs? How can you relate to their issues from a position of power?
Perfect. Thank you so much for reading that out, Jillian. I want to start off by addressing that I would start off by bridging the gap that exists between the SMU members as well as the SMU executives. This could be by having more office hours, having events where executives take part with other SMU members to ensure that we're all on the same page. In a way, also make sure that students know that they can reach out to executives through multiple channels, be it social media, be it Google Form. I would make sure that there's options for students to represent themselves anonymously, as well as if they wish to disclose their names, that's fine as well. So provide the option for anonymity in order to ensure that we're able to kind of communicate with them. And what was the second part of the question? I think I'm blacking out a little bit.
That's no problem. It is, how are you going to relate to student issues from a position of power?
I think being an international student at McGill, I think it puts you in a position like that already, because you learn from these. In the last 2 years, I think I've been able to, kind of narrow down what difficulties I've had while attending university. And if I'm in a position of power, this is not something I will forget. So I think my personal experience as a person of color coming all the way to university here would be extremely helpful in, working around identifying challenges about that students face here on campus and representing them to the executive committee.
Your time has elapsed, thank you. Ananya, would you like me to reread the question?
I'm good. I'm ready to answer, actually. Thank you. So I think that the answer to that question comes from the understanding that I am one of them, one of the students, because I have been in their position first, and only after experiencing all those things have I come to get myself to muster up the courage to stand for this position that I am running for. And I think that this understanding is very important to before starting my duties as VP internal, because I want to be more approachable in person for students to reach out to whenever they want to, which is why I keep my door open for in-person meetings for longer durations during the week. I want to make others feel welcome into the university center and my office and think of me as a friend that they can reach out to easily and comfortably, because I feel like more than anything else, this is what's important. More than what we lay out in our platforms and portfolios, I think it's important to be available and approachable. And adding on to Jazz's point, I really like what she said about being an international student and the experiences that come with it. I am an international student as well, and I completely agree on our experiences shaping our responsibilities for the future and for the role.
Thank you. Your time has elapsed. And then Kat, you get a 30-second response.
All right, thank you so much for your answers, guys. This is great. I would like to say that using equity training from my previous roles as a fresh leader and from being involved in multiple different groups, I think the first step is to acknowledge that there is a power imbalance and that this will continue to be raised just by the nature of the position that we would be in. And through that, like the difference then is making sure that you create like the most successful way for you to be approachable. And I really like everything you guys have commented on, increase office hours, making sure you have an open door policy. I love those kind of ideas. And similarly as well, I'm also a national student,
Your
so I
time has
understand.
now elapsed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jazz, if you now would like to pose your question.
Jillian, I have a quick question. Can I pose different questions to the candidates?
We ask you pose the same question so that everyone can respond to the same one.
Okay, so my question to both the candidates would be, given that the SSMU has a large number of government documents, internal regulations that require a lot of understanding, and I do not mean to say this in a negative way, but I see that there's a little lack of experience on part of both candidates. How do you think you would cope with having to familiarize yourself with the working environment at SSMU?
We'll start with the response from Ananya and then Kat.
Sure. So I think that even though I have not been employed by SSMU in the past, I think that I have enough experience to understand that my role requires more than the work that I have been doing in the past. I am currently co-president of the Indian Students Association, which I served for as first year rep last year. And I think that with this role, I have come to learn a lot about how the SSMU functions and how and what we are expected to do in future. And I think that all those government documents and all those rules and regulations that we're supposed to know, I think it's not a big deal to learn or get familiarized with all of them, given that the elaborate amount of work that I already have done in the past. I think that I am more than capable of getting myself familiarized with everything and then be on top of my game.
Okay, thank you. Kat, you now have a minute to answer.
Great. Thank you for your question, Jazz. So I would say that first and foremost, as we've seen from the great example of Sarah and going to be incumbent VP internal, she didn't have much experience going into the role as well, especially in policy. And I think this is something that has been proven is, yes, something that can be learned and can be attained. And policies are a very important part of being a member of SSMU and sitting on those boards that as an exec does. And so but this isn't something that has to be right now, has to be knowledge you have right now. As you've seen, it's something that can be learned and can be built upon, and something that I'm very dedicated to build upon my knowledge of. A lot of other experience in other aspects that is super important to the role of VP internal, specifically on events and communications, which is the two biggest portfolios of an internal position. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I keep not unmuting myself. Jazz, you now get a 30-second response.
I don't have a rebuttal, but I want to thank the candidates for answering my question, and I appreciate their dedication and determinism towards the position right now. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will now have the final question posed by Ananya, and we will have Kat answer first and then Jazz.
Okay, so my question is, it's been a tough transition coming back to in-person classes and activities after being so used to online school for almost 2 years. And I just want to know more about how you would take this in your stride and reinstate an in-person university experience for students.
Okay, Kat, if you want to respond.
Great question. I would say that first and foremost, communication is obviously such a big aspect of the VP role. And using that, I would love to get the most amount of input possible from the student body to see what they're expecting, what they would like, and what they'd like to change with events and in-person activities, and events ranging from, classic McGill, FACO, Halloween party, to then also seminars and workshops and much more obtainable kind of in-person activities. I was obviously making sure that all government current regulations are respected and are fully followed. And obviously, I know this year SSMU has been a lot more cautious of those, which is very valid given the concerns that students have had about in-person activities and in-person classes. And so that's something that you'd have to just respect and listen to the voice of the students and what they would like to see.
Okay, thank you. Jazz, if you would like to answer, you have a minute.
Thank you, Jalen. And thank you, Ananya, for your question. I think it's an excellent question. We live during these times which are super, super uncertain. You never know what's happening next. And I think at a time like this, like Kat said, it is important to first get an idea of what students really want. And I think that would be my focus as well. Apart from that, I do recognize that there are individuals who cannot attend in-person, be it classes or events, due to because they're immunocompromised or due to other concerns, which I completely understand. And in that case, I would work towards making events accessible through other platforms, such as online platforms. And as for in-person transition, I think it's been a difficult time for everybody, but we're gradually moving towards it. And it would be extremely helpful if, given my position, I would use it to work alongside the mandates that are provided by the government in order to ensure safety first of the individuals, and then build upon providing an atmosphere and a place that allows students to kind of touch upon their experiences while they're transitioning.
The time has elapsed. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now go to Ananya for a 30-second response.
Thank you. I don't really have a rebuttal. I just want to thank you for your answers, and I feel really inspired, to be standing up against such nice ideas and such opinionated women. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll now move on to the SSMUnion question.
All right, so the question from the SSMUnion is, the role of VP internal is often seen as social, but it is also largely centered around communication, typically handling the many ups and downs that SSMU sees in a year. How will you interact with the employees when navigating these moments where SSMU is making campus headlines? So I'll return to the order that we used for the opening statements. So that'll be Jazz, followed by Ananya, followed by Kat.
First of all, thank you so much for the question. And in addressing the interaction that employees have while SSMU making campus headlines, I think part of my role would be to, first of all, streamline the idea of how SSMU employees and members interact with one another, as well as the press. I think the press plays a really, really important role here. So identifying a media plan that streamlines the process of what individuals can interact and what kind of information can be exchanged would be extremely helpful, as well as I can understand it can be overwhelming for some individuals. So at a time like that, providing resources for individuals to kind of deal with situations which, if they feel uncomfortable or if they feel like it is not something they signed up for. So providing resources to be it GSVP or be it training in media.
Your time has elapsed.
Thank you.
Sorry, you may now start.
Thank you. So, as I said, working as the president of the Indian Students Association, I have seen the working of SSMU pretty closely. And do I know how many ups and downs we face as a team and as a SSMU club? So I think that being a team player is a very, very important thing when it comes to ups and downs in a student body. It does not matter if it's SSMU or a high school student council or any other place of work. I feel that being a part of a team, it's very important to realize that you're not an individual person, no matter what position you hold. So being loyal to employees and being authoritative at the same time, maintaining your authority and responsibility at the same time is extremely crucial. And I feel that I have the experience and the capability to understand and act on that very well. And
Thank you. Your time has elapsed. Kat, you now have a minute as the final answer.
Great, thank you. So as the question asked particularly about interactions with co-employees within SMU, I think such a key element of that is making sure that there is accessibility and equity and inclusivity around the role, and particularly if any employees are with pressure and what headlines are interfering with them and their work and how it's making them feel. And this is such an important aspect to make sure that people feel like, especially employers, that they have that kind of accessibility to the equity and to those kind of resources, basically. And so through that, I would love to create an equity package that includes any kind of resources on how to reach your accessibility and equity ambassadors, which are such an underrated part of the SMU employees. And just making sure that everyone feels like they would have someone to go to and would be able to express any concerns that they had within the employee environment.
Your time has elapsed. Thank you. We will now move on to questions from online.
So the first question reads, how would you fight voter apathy and a general lack of student participation in student politics? And we'll go Ananya first, followed by Kat, followed by Jazz.
Thank you. So student participation in student politics, I think I'm still figuring it out with this campaign and this election, and I'm learning something new every day. And I feel that when I was a student, when I just came to McGill, I did not know a lot about the SSMU and how elections work and how I can get involved and all those things, particularly because I was studying online. So I think that now that we're transitioning back to in-person school, I think things will be a lot easier. I think the first step towards getting students to participate is to get them to know what we're doing and what we're expecting them to do. And that will, again, it goes back to being transparent and being accountable, being accessible, being approachable to them so that they know how they can get involved and how they can, exercise their right as a student.
Kat, if you'd like to go next.
Sure, thank you. So when fighting about, the lack to involve students in SMU and engaging with that is something that I've definitely felt as well, where especially over the last 2 years, it's been especially difficult with COVID, feeling so distant from the SMU environment and from McGill itself as a whole. And so through this, I would love to, really engage my portfolio aspect of communications. And through that, and as I said previously, creating, not just adding on to already present means of communications with student body, like the listservs and social media, but creating whole new means of communication that are much more accessible to a broader range of students, and students feel like that they know about this kind of SMU and everything that it offers, but not feeling like there's a way in, not feeling like they can get themselves in the door. And I think with that and opening up that little channel into SMU is really going to open up a whole other branches of engagement, in particularly voting and student politics, which is a super underrated part of McGill student life.
Your time has now elapsed. Thank you.
And then finally, Jazz.
Talking about voter apathy, I think it comes about from the lack of awareness in case of SSMU. I think people are unaware about the SSMU. They're unaware about what tools, what resources we have to offer. So as communication is a part of my portfolio, my goal would be to ensure that more and more students engage and more students are aware about the resources and the tools that we're able to offer. As a result, they're able to engage more. A part of my campaign also talks about providing inclusive and diverse events. In doing so, I would also focus on targeting marginalized groups on campus, which might not necessarily participate in student politics. As a result, there's that slight upgrade from not participating to being partly involved. And lastly, I also want to touch upon providing incentives. I think that's a great initiative. That's a great way to get more and more students to engage. This could be, like we're having a workshop and, there's an incentive, there's an XYZ gift card or, incentives about leadership leadership roles, I think these can be extremely helpful in.
Your time has now elapsed. Thank you.
All right, so for our next online question, we have many of your platforms talk about the social aspect of the internal portfolio, little mention of the existing first-year council of SMU, which is an important element. How do you plan on reaching out first years in different ways than in previous years? And for this, we'll go Kat first, Jazz second, and then Ananya last.
Great, thank you. And I think this is definitely a very valid concern to have, that the first year council is not as big of a whole idea as event communication, but that doesn't undermine and doesn't mean that it's not as, fundamental to being a McGill student and the experience you're gonna have. And particularly this is as a student in their first year, this is one of the ways they're gonna get involved in SMU right from the start and become aware of everything that SMU has to offer. And so through this, I would love to, be in the position of mentorship and guidance overall to a first year council and helping them through their ways and, kind of navigate their first involvement into SMU in the university. And this is kind of something that I have experience in being a frosh leader, where I've, been that person for this group of froshies who now at McGill don't know anything about even the basic stuff like classes, and being there as a source of information for them, as a source of support, was really important to me. And I was something I wanted to carry over into a position of VP internal.
Thank you. Your time's elapsed. And now we will go to Jazz.
I think a component of my campaign touches upon this. Talking about first year council, I think one way to kind of enhance the engagement would be reaching out to all the first year reps for different faculties. This also falls under the internal portfolio, and I feel like it would also allow for inter-faculty exchange. In talking about first years, it would also be kind of insightful to reach out to residences. In reaching out to residences, you meet a lot of new first year students. I was in a residence myself, and I think that allowed me to engage with more people. It also ensured that I was informed about events that were taking place, be it through SMU or McGill. And another way to reach out would be plan the orientation week. I think that's extremely crucial. So at a time like that, providing them with support kits for the Montreal life, be it a map with nice cafes or clubs that they could enjoy, by providing them resources, giving them tools that would allow for them to reach out to us.
Now elapsed. Thank you. And then we'll have our final response to this question.
Yeah, as a first year student, I think that there are hundreds of questions that run through one's mind, and I aim to make SMU a one-stop solution to all of those. I hope to make this happen through information sessions on things like apartment hunting, banking, opportunities to get involved at McGill for first years, and making SMU conduct events that are more inclusive for first years will give them a first-hand experience on how we operate and how they can get involved in future. There could be an access and inclusion peer program with the first year council, which connects first years to upper year mentor navigators that can help them with such stuff. And they can also be, we can advertise study sessions at the various study spaces in the university center, as well as Gertz Cafe for anyone, particularly first years, to make new friends, study together. And yeah, of course, orientation week, as Kat and Jazz touched upon it already. I think that orientation week is one of the most important times during first year's experience at McGill. So I think that making that more inclusive will be a great way to make them feel welcome in Montreal.
Well, that is your time. Thank you. So we'll now move on to audience questions. But before we do that, we just want to let you know, apologies that this is coming late, but that if anyone has French translation needs, that there is someone here who is willing to help if any of the candidates would like to respond in French in any way. So we have some audience questions. We'll just have one, just because we are running a little bit behind, and you guys have done a great job answering questions so far. So we had... sorry, one second, just grabbing the question. We had another question specifically asking about first years. And it asks, how do you plan on getting in contact with first years? and specifically engaging with first-year council. I recognize that as we just talked about a first-year question, I'll pick a second one. We have a question in French. If any of the candidates would like help with translation, please let us know. Quelles sont vos intentions face à la communauté francophone à McGill? Comment allez-vous faire une priorité?
Just have a try that.
Okay, yeah. For the translation.
Hi, Jalen. Could you please just send me the question and I'll translate that for you?
I can't actually, unfortunately, copy and paste in Zoom.
Oh, okay.
No worries. I can translate that for us. It is what are your intentions towards the Francophone community at McGill, and how are you going to make them a priority and prioritize the Francophone community? We'll start with Jazz.
Thank you for the question, Jalen, and thank you for translating it as well. A part of my portfolio, a part of my campaign also touches upon on bilingual accessibility. So when I say that, I recognize that the use of the French language on campus is not as much as one would expect, given we live in Quebec. And from my understanding of the working of SSMU, I've come to realize that the Francophone Affairs Committee is headed by the Francophone Affairs Commissioner. And I think in doing my part, I would maybe come up with a program that could pair up, let's say first years maybe with French students, just to like allow them to get a working understanding of the French language, so they're able to kind of, get more equipped for their life here in Montreal. Apart from that, I would also have a mentor-mentee sort of. I would also have workshops. These could be to, kind of talk more about the role of French on campus and how there are ways we could maybe take this forward. And lastly, I would also want to touch upon about how documents on the website.
Time has elapsed.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go Ananya. You have a minute.
Yes, thank you. So the Access and Inclusion Peer program that I talked about in my previous answer is something that I want to introduce as a vast, inclusive, and flexible kind of program, which will include interests of first year council as well as the Francophone committee. So this Access and Inclusion Peer program basically aims to connect students with upper year mentors. And this can be done through the Francophone committee also, where we connect students who do not speak or understand French very well to perfectly bilingual students who can, help them and also make friends in the process. And I think that this will be a great way for people who do not feel as welcome in the city because of not knowing French, to make new friends and also practice French better, if I may say so.
Okay, thank you. And then Kat with the final response.
Okay, thank you. So similarly as well to my answer to first year council, the previous one we just had, again, I recognize that Francophone affairs and highlighting the importance of bilingual accessibility might not seem as big of a part as a VP internal role, but this is not something that should be ignored at all, seeing as how, the middle of Montreal and Quebec, where we live and as Jazz said, it's a little surprising how little French integrated into the McGill community. I think one way that I would love to expand on this is to create a lot more, more everyday, more easy, more accessible, more just like, casual means of getting involved in the French community, getting involved in the French culture, particularly the Quebec Québécois culture, which is such an important aspect of, living here and where we are. And this is something that I would like to, work on and just making things a lot more attainable in everyday life.
Thank you. Your time has elapsed. We will now move on to I believe it's closing statements. And so we will go with Kat first, then Ananya, and then we'll end with Jazz. You have 1 minute.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I just would like to say thank you for these questions. I've had a great time answering them. And in conclusion, in all honesty, I am an average McGill student, I would say. And, I get good grades. Sometimes I do bad hours. I like to have fun. I like to get involved with student life. And this is something that makes us a great fit for the role, is that I can really relate to just your average McGill student and understanding how that fits in with SMU and seeing SMU as this big, overarching conglomerate, when in reality, there's so many ways to get involved and so many aspects and channels to get into. And that's something that I, again, would love to focus on, just making all of these incredible opportunities so much more accessible and communicating this a lot more to the student government, to the student body, and, just listening to them and being the change that they would like to see. Thank you so much.
Okay, perfect. Now we'll have Ananya.
Thank you. My elaborate experience with event management, student governance, and communications and social media management has really helped me evolve as a responsible leader and learn a lot in the process. And I just want to end by saying that we're all in this together. We have the same goal, that is to make McGill a better place for students to be in and build relationships and memories in the process. I am patient, I am compassionate, I'm hardworking, and I care. So I'm one of you. I'm still learning and constantly trying to be a better version of myself. I'm in this with my whole heart, and I'll work with you and for you towards a better university experience for us all. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we'll have Jazz.
I'm going to keep this super short. I want to start off by restating what I said in my opening statement. I want to let you know that my campaign aims towards making SMU approachable, more accountable, more engaging, more equitable, and lastly, more transparent. In doing so, I understand that I would need to present effective communication skills to make sure that we foster a workspace that is safe, that is healthy, and it allows, one, for collaboration to happen and for collaborative outcomes to come, and second, a workspace that represents a diversity of individuals unified by their collective sense of love for SMU. Last but not least, I want to take the opportunity to acknowledge and credit the current executives for the great work they've done so far. And if elected, I hope to carry that forward. And I also want to thank my best friend here just very quickly, because she means a lot to me and she's here today. So thank you, Nancy, for your support. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Okay, thank you. We're now going to move into a very brief intermission. If anyone wants to go to the washroom, grab some water. So we will be back in 5 minutes.
Hi. So welcome back, everyone. As Galen just mentioned, we're going to get started with the VP external. I believe we have an error on the slide, so we're going to do the VP student life and then the president. So firstly, with the VP external, this year's candidate is Val Mancy, and this will be similar to the first format that we followed at the start of the debate, which is a 1-minute opening statement, followed by a 1-minute answer to an executive question, a 1-minute response to a SSMUnion question, and a 1-minute response each to 2 online forum questions, and then a chance for audience questions, and then finally a 1-minute closing statement. So Val, if you'd like to make your opening statement.
Oh, sorry, Val, we can't hear you.
Is that better?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay,
I'll restart the
cool.
timer.
Before we start, actually, I'm wearing a mask because I'm on campus right now, but if anyone has any accessibility needs, you can just inbox, I guess, the
Yeah, feel free to message us and we can communicate that.
Okay, so I guess, hi, salut, I'm Val. I'm a psychology student minoring in gender, sexuality, and feminist studies. I have previously worked in the External Affairs Office as coordinator, and I also currently work as an educator for people with various accessibility needs. I've been an organizer for the past 3 years, and I intend to fulfill the current mandates of the VP External, advocating at the university, municipal, provincial, federal level, maintaining relationships with unions, community, student associations, federations, and as well as supporting current campaigns. I also intend to promote student engagement, accessibility, accountability, as well as build stronger solidarities, notably by doing more consultation, by supporting unions and BIPOC, unhoused, migrant, queer, and trans communities and their mobilization, notably through facilitating their access to SSMU resources.
Thank you, Val. So to start, from the current VP external, the external affairs portfolio has often been over-focused on particular issues at the expense of global representation. How will you ensure that not only all affiliated campaigns will be supported in the same way, but how will you affect change in the systems we currently have to ensure that every student has a voice on global issues should they need one?
Yes, this is a great question. Actually, it relates directly to this idea of facilitating access to SSMU. Current access to financial and non-financial support from SSMU is very difficult and tedious, and so facilitating that would help ensure that all campaigns kind of get the same treatment. So reworking that framework is really important, and a lot of focus has been on grassroots organizing, but SSMU has also important mandates, notably in regards to accessibility advocacy, in regards to international students and their right in the education system in Quebec, notably to the financial aid system and how we can rework that. So I think the portfolio is a large one, and in order to make sure that we are taking care of all of these issues, it's important to work with the team that I have previously worked with as a coordinator, but to ensure that, yeah.
Thank you. Your time is now elapsed.
All right, so next from this SSMUnion, how would you navigate the autonomy of employees in your portfolio with regard to the many projects they work on where they may need support rather than direction?
I think previously having worked as a coordinator for educators has also helped me learn a lot about micromanaging and not doing it. I think it's important for the team to have clearer goals and to have an idea of the general direction we need to do. But once kind of that is decided, then SSMU is full of very competent people who know what they're doing. And so the idea is to listen to them and to really work with them in a non-hierarchical way as much as possible. in order to support them and to help them in achieving the goals that are set by the mandates that students give us.
All right, so on to our online forum question. The VP external portfolio tends to be very fragmented. How would you work to improve it?
Yeah, I saw that actually by looking at everything and how extensive all of it is. I think it's important for this portfolio to really be made kind of simpler into the different kind of areas in which it works, which is like advocacy, education. You can also hold event. There's research and all of the other kind of bits and pieces. I think really redefining the role is a possibility. I'd have to obviously work with staff and see like where they feel there's a lack of, you know, cohesive platform. I think to do that.
All right, and our next online forum question. Given the extensive involvement of the VP Externals Department with local communities, as well as the SSMU's push towards Francisization, do you think it is important for a VP External candidate to be fluent in French? Should this be a hard requirement for future elections?
That's an interesting question. In full transparency, le français c'est ma langue maternelle. So I am fluent in French. It is important to work in French. I have found, however, that by working with like communities in the Milton Park area and with various organizations such as the CCMP, and that English and both you, I do think though that like a good comprehension of French is necessary. Fluency, I mean, we can always learn, and I think so yeah, I don't know if a hard requirement would be necessary in terms of like, I don't know, with fluency, but definitely like a good comprehension of French is an advantage in that sense.
All right, so we'll move on now to audience questions. Jalen, are there any questions from the audience?
Yes, I've received one. How will you work to improve the SSMU's image in the larger Montreal community?
That's a good question. Actually, I was at some student associations in Lucerne this morning to do mobilization for another event, and that relations have been difficult sometimes, and just, yeah, making sure that we build solidarity in the city with other student associations, but also with groups that are working in various advocacy mandates. Yeah, in general, I think for SSMU to have a good image in the community, in the Montreal community, it needs to be involved in that community. And that involvement can pass through many ways. I notably want to have more solidarity by doing some inter-union solidarity work, as well as supporting Indigenous sovereignty struggles, such as struggles by the Kanien'kehá:ka Kanescensora, the Mohawk mothers. And I think, yeah, just getting more involved in the community is necessary for the good image of SSMU.
Thank you. Your time has elapsed. And then we have one more audience question. There is a conflict between the SSMU and McGill in terms of the stance on the Royal Vic development. If you know about this, what is your wish to deal with the situation?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, SSMU arts marginalized students, racialized students, Indigenous students, and there have been clear call-outs from Indigenous communities on the fact that there's a strong possibility of unmarked graves on the Royal Vic location. And I think the fact that McGill is currently in court against the Kanien'kehá:ka Kanescensora in regards to this is atrocious. And I think there's no one way to solve it, because it's fault and listen to the demand. It's all good to do land acknowledgements, but in order for decolonization to happen, we need to take action. And I think showing strong support, strong solidarity with the people affected by the situation is very crucial.
Okay, you now have a minute to make a closing statement.
Yeah, most of my platform is based on consultation, on getting to know you, your ideas, and the various people that the External Affairs VP has to work with. I hold a lot of those relationships because I've been organizing for a while in this city, but I'm always looking for your input. And so feel free to reach out to me on social media, on email, or just, yeah, come and find me because I'm looking forward to hearing from you. I've already gotten some replies from various organizations. I haven't reached out to you yet. Please feel free to reach out in French or in English. I'd be happy to hear from you.
Thank you, Val. So moving on to our next portfolio, which is the VP Student Life, which this year is being contested between Hassanatu Koulibaly and Olivia Borgny. So the format for this will be 1 minute opening statements per each candidate, followed by a 1 minute response to an executive question. Afterwards, the candidates will pose each other one question, 1 minute for the other candidate to reply, followed by a 30-second rebuttal. Then a SSMUnion question with 1 minute response each, and 2 online questions and 2 audience questions, followed by 1 minute closing statements. So Hassanatu, if you'd like to start us off with your opening statement.
Hi, bonjour. I'm Hassanatu. My pronouns are she, her. Over the course of my 3 years, I've made it a point to be actively involved in student life, that McGill has to offer. In my current role as president of McGill's African Student Society, I've been able to firsthand see and understand both the passions and frustrations of clubs and services. I want to be able to provide greater support through enhanced event communications as we move towards an in-person year. As someone who has noticed the lacking visibility of mental health resources, I would like to bring the topic directly into the classroom by introducing a new academic consideration, one that respects the privacy of students and continue the efforts of centralizing mental health resources through the implementation of things such as the Wellness World portal. I would also like to ensure that the smaller population of student caregivers are heard and provided for through better communication and provisions for those on the waitlist, and in supporting the essential expansion of the day candidate services. Lastly, I have personal projects with a focus on religious and cultural spaces, which I can expand on in the Q&A period. Thank you.
Olivia, if you'd like to go next.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Olivia, and I'm very excited to be running as your next VP Student Life. I've decided to run because I'm very passionate about mental health, student involvement, and playing an active leading role in developing student life here at McGill. Si élu, je vais mettre en place 3 objectifs. Promotion à la provision des services de santé mentale, des relations positives et efficaces entre SMU et les membres de la société, et des mesures efficaces de liaison entre les services, des clubs et les organisations de SMU. Placing mental health, student engagement, and streamlined methods of engagement at the forefront of my platform, I will implement effective strategies so that each member of the student society feels listened to, represented, and important in student government. It is time to restore the positive, productive relationship amongst the McGill community for all. Joignez-vous à moi pour créer un gouvernement étudiant pour vous. Let's establish a new chapter of student life together at McGill, built on collaboration, trust, and effective leadership.
All right, thank you both. So we'll move on to the question from the current VP Student Life. Can you name and explain 2 to 3 action points you plan to achieve to ensure higher student engagement on SMU-related activities? So for this, we'll go Olivia first and then Hassanatu.
Right, absolutely. So far, my ideas are that I'm going to be implementing a McGill Spirit Week that is going to be held once a semester. This would not only foster an engaging community at the McGill level, but also gain further media relations and positive relationships in between SMU and what they do for students, because right now I'm aware that there's a general lack of knowledge in what SMU does, because I've had multiple people ask me, what does SMU really do? Who do they represent? And who do they stand for? Another thing that I really want to do is to redevelop and further implement the volunteer services at the SMU student daycare, because I believe this is very crucial to not only students, but also staff members who do use the daycare. And we need to further empower these people that are so important in our community. Those are two of my ideas so far. And I'd also like to create a GERTS student-run volunteer kind of ambassador program so that students can not only learn more about GERTS as a student service, and we can also engage students at GERTS itself.
Your time has now elapsed. Thank you. Hasanatu, if you want to answer.
So one of the first action points that I plan to achieve to ensure higher student engagement on SMU-related activities is increasing event communications amongst club members, amongst clubs and services, and amongst the executives. So what I've found is that a lot of memberships do overlap in terms of clubs and services. For example, MAS and BSN, we have a lot of members who do belong to both communities, and collaboration is super, super important when it comes to catering to those needs and ensuring that those students are able to go to events that they feel that they identify with. A second thing that I would also like to implement is a sort of calendar where we can also allow for event spaces to be provided for clubs and services to use. I find that like online platforms have seen a reduced involvement with students, and being able to provide event spaces for clubs to fulfill their ideas is super imperative as we move towards an in-person year, and encouraging students to attend these events as well.
Thank you both. Now we'll move on to the candidate discussion question, where you each get a chance to pose each other a question, with that candidate getting the opportunity for a 1-minute response, followed by a 30-second rebuttal. So we'll switch the order again. We'll go Hasanatu first, and then Olivia.
Okay, my question is like detailed, so I can also send it in. So if you need further clarification. But I noticed that one of your plans for clubs and services is to do monthly check-ins with representatives from the executives. How do you plan to undertake such a large task, considering the number of clubs, student-run services, and independent groups? The fact that these are also full-time students outside of their executive roles, while ensuring that you're meeting the needs of clubs and fulfilling your responsibilities.
Right. Thank you for the question. So my thoughts on this are obviously because there are over 250 clubs, there are 17 different students and 11 independently run student groups here at SMU. Obviously, the first thing that I would do, always ask for help. I can always turn to my coworkers when I'm in need. I'm very good with task delegation so that I'm very organized and staying on top of everything. Something else that we can do is reaching out to them. If they can't schedule a meeting time, then maybe we can go to a survey. Maybe we can just do a quick little 10-minute call. I do not think that this would take too much time, but it would really be best and beneficial to streamline student services here at McGill and make sure that everybody is getting the support that they need in order to best provide for their students.
And Hasanatu, if you'd like to make your 30-second rebuttal.
Yeah, thank you for your answer. I do feel as though a much more effective use of time would be to implement procedures where they can just submit these issues. I think that check-ins minimize the complexity of clubs and the different facets that are involved in them. I think providing the resources and then making yourself available to questions and concerns should be a focus priority. But thank you for your answer.
Your time is now elapsed. Olivia, you may now pose a question.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So as VP Student Life, mental health falls under your portfolio, so you work with the mental health team. I saw in your pen sketch that you're going to be actively prioritizing mental health in classrooms. So going off of the mental health policy, how are you going to ensure that professors are successfully implementing strategies to foster an academically safe and well-being space?
So, sorry, do you tell me that I have a minute?
It's fine, you have a minute, go.
Okay. So one of the things that I've noticed specifically with professors, and the reason why my focus is on bringing it into the classroom, is that each professor kind of has a way that they tackle the dealing with mental health issues. I think the academic consideration that I would like to introduce working with professors would entirely eliminate that sort of bias in terms of how they value mental health. So that academic consideration will allow students to speak to professors at a different time, while professors also like knowing what their responsibilities are to students, without the student necessarily having to open up their hearts in an email to them and like make them put themselves in a vulnerable position.
Olivia, you can have a 30-second response.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for your answer. I think you made a bunch of really, really great points. I do also agree that we do need to work hand in hand with professors, and that the work that has been done on the academic wellness proposal and the strategic plan for how we can bring mental health into the classrooms, that has been great, and we need to continue to push on this so that perhaps maybe there can even be a statement on the syllabus about needing mental health accommodations. We can work with the mental health team that the VP Student Life oversees. And there is already a statement put up on my courses, which does provide a few different mental health suggestions and a few resources.
Your time has now elapsed. We'll now move on to the SSMUnion question. Thank you both.
Thank you, Jalen. So the SSMUnion question is, considering the Student Life portfolio has the largest number of employees, mostly from services, which are semi-autonomous, how do you intend to support the unique needs of services and their employees? So Olivia, if you'd like to go first.
Yeah, right. So definitely staying on top of everything and being very organized is very, very important into this. So I think by intending like to support the unique needs of services and the specific employees, it's very important to make sure that you stay organized yourself and that you're able to get a really good grasp on what everybody needs and what they do for the students, so that maybe you can direct these people to you can direct them to other people that you work with. And you also just need to make sure that you're really staying on top of everything and understanding that everybody does something different and that we're all working together to provide the best student services possible.
And Hassanatu?
Yes. So in terms of supporting the unique needs of services and employees, I'd like to bring back to the point of providing as many resources and facilitating the fulfillment of their ideas. So things like providing event spaces, like I previously mentioned, would be super, super important. I think making yourself available to hear what it is that they also require, so that you can implement those. I think autonomy is super, super important when it comes to these services and to the communities that they cater to. So essentially making yourself available to hear what it is that they require and addressing those needs, and while also providing all the resources that you possibly can, so that there isn't room for so that there isn't much room for something to be lacking.
All right, so we'll start with our first online forum question, which is, what are your plans to revitalize student life on campus while managing the ever-changing COVID-19 situation? And we'll start with Hassanatu.
So as McGill moves back to an in-person year next year, I would love to bring back what I remember seeing from my first year at McGill, student life, being on campus in general, having events outdoors, the tents that you'd see like right in front of the arts building, things like that, bringing those back. Activities night, super, super important in terms of clubs getting their visibility, services getting their visibility. And one thing that I'd also like to make use of, though, is the virtual resources that we have acquired over the past 2 years. Sorry. I think they have helped to facilitate involvement for some people who haven't necessarily been able to be in person. I think there's a lot of things like the triple play, like the Scriblios that we've had at some of our events that are super fun and engaging for different people. So that's how we're planning to do that.
And Olivia?
Right, absolutely. So just because we're in a situation where things are still continuously changing and we need to abide by McGill's rules, but on the other hand, we also do need to keep in mind the provincial regulations. I plan on providing a hybrid approach to fall since we cannot be 100% certain that everything is going to be completely back to in-person, as well as increasing our student consultation through the usage of forms, meetings with them, and check-ins. I believe that student consultation is very, very important in this because they're the ones that are going to be benefiting from our services that we are providing. So definitely team building. We need to focus on collaborating with everybody in the student life portfolio and as well as the other executives.
All right, thank you. We have a third online form question. So we'll start with Olivia this time, and it's, if elected, what will you do to address Francophone students' concerns regarding accessibility and student life in SMU and more broadly at McGill?
Selon moi, je trouve que c'est bon de recogniser que le SMU, c'est une compagnie qui est bilingue. So I definitely, French is not my first language, but I am still learning French. So I definitely believe that we just need to increase our French services and increase our language programs so that we really can provide kind of student services and buddy partners so that students who maybe want to learn French can start learning French with another student, almost in a peer support and mentorship program. I also agree that the SMU needs to have more French services, not only available on their websites, but also in the services that we do provide. I would love to see more volunteers working at the Peer Support Center who can offer supports in French. And I also think that just providing more French services, not just if you need to speak French or if you need to submit something in French, that's okay. But I think we also need to create every syllabus so that it is in French as well as in English. That way it's a lot more accessible and it's a lot more reflective.
Hassanatu, you may now give your 1 minute response.
Yeah, so I also agree that catering to our Francophone community and just in general exposing people to the French language, considering we live in Montreal, which speaks both French and English, is of utmost importance. I agree with Olivia's point about offering services in French as well as things like syllabus in the French language as well. I think I personally started French when I was very, very young, so I don't remember much of it. But I do see that there are different ways that things can be expressed in a different language, and that could serve of greater understanding. I think, for example, the SMU website definitely does need work on that. I took a look at it just to try out my French, and there are still certain things that are still written in English. So I do think providing that necessary translation for students is important.
Okay, and then we'll go with one audience question since we just had 3 online questions. And the question is in French, and it is, que pensez-vous des droits actuels accordés aux campagnes politiques affiliées? So the English translation, what do you think of the current rights accorded to affiliated political campaigns of the SMU? And feel free to answer in your most comfortable language, and I or Sinan can provide translation for the rest of the form. We'll start with Hassanatu.
Sorry, could you just repeat the question one more time?
Sure. Would you prefer it in English or in French?
Either or. English is good.
Okay. The question is, what do you think of the current rights accorded to affiliated political campaigns of the SMU?
Okay. So I think that political campaigns at SMU are very much supposed to be representative of the student body. I think every campaign has the right to express themselves and to campaign in the way that they see fit while respecting other campaigns. I think in my position of VP Student Life, it would be a matter of expressing all of those various views. I think the way that I can play a role in this is by allowing that expression, facilitating that expression, while also maintaining an impartial stance on that.
Okay. Alors, Hassanatu a dit que les campagnes politiques affiliées doivent représenter les étudiants de McGill et le droit d'expression et de campagne, c'est très important. Et que dans sa rôle comme vice-présidente des vies étudiantes, elle respectera les vues de ces campagnes et elle va faciliter leur opération. Olivia, it's your turn to answer in either English or French.
Right. So I definitely agree that everybody has the right to express themselves, to mobilize, and to bring political protests into SSMU and McGill, and we definitely should be celebrating this and promoting activism on campus. However, I do need to make sure that if I were elected to be in VP Student Life, we need to make sure that these campaigns are done in an effective manner without hurting others or offending anybody. So I would like to propose that we perhaps create policies or procedures that students need to submit to SSMU before making a stance on campus to ensure that everything is kind of done in a very streamlined fashion and couldn't infringe upon anybody's personal, mental, or physical safety.
Et alors, Olivia a dit qu'elle est d'accord avec le droit d'expression de ses campagnes et dans sa rôle comme vice-présidente de vie étudiante, elle dit qu'elle va promouvoir ses campagnes et elle veut faciliter leur opération pour travailler d'une manière effective et non offensive. Elle aussi voulait créer des politiques et des procédures pour leur opération, pour assurer que personne ne soit pas offendu par ces campagnes. My apologies for the non-perfect French, but yeah, if you guys would like to make your closing statements, we'll start with Olivia.
Right, absolutely. So thank you everyone for listening to my ideas and my plans for if I was elected to be next Vice President of Student Life. With my current roles as Mental Health Outreach Coordinator, VP Communications for NDP McGill, and various other leadership roles that I've taken onto campus, I'm also going to be submitting a full platform document, which will have everything comprehensive as to what I've spoken about today. And I'm really passionate about student life here at McGill, and I want to foster a community where students feel accepted, empowered, and engaged with their student services, and that they're proud to say that they have an active role in the McGill community. So I want to implement further mental health training, support for clubs and services, and develop methods of organization so that students are able to attend safe, engaging events in the McGill community. Let's make SSMU a place that is truly for you.
Thank you, Olivia. Hassanatu, if you'd like to make your closing statement now.
Yes, as I hope I've made clear throughout this debate, I have great passion for all three domains of VP Student Life and their respective responsibilities. I'm committed to taking a practical and active role in implementing constructive resources. In doing so, focus would be obviously on listening and acknowledging the wants and needs of the student body and meeting them. As a club executive, I will facilitate the fulfillment of ideas and projects. As someone who has had experience being a student caregiver myself, I will listen to those who hold the same responsibilities. And as someone who understands the fluctuating impact of mental health, I will protect our right to privacy while also providing a resource to maintain academic success at McGill. Je serais ravie de vous servir comme VP vie étudiante l'année prochaine. I would be honored to be your VP Student Life. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. We're now going to move on to the much anticipated president.
So for the president position, we have three candidates. We have Julian Gadote, Brian Braga, and Roseanne Wright. The format of this will be opening statements from each candidate, followed by executive question posed by the current executive, and another candidate discussion portion similar to that for VP internal, where each candidate will get the opportunity to pose one question to the other two candidates, followed by a response to the SSMUnion question, and then responding to online questions and audience questions, and then finally closing statements. So Julian, if you'd like to commence with your opening statement.
With pleasure, Anthony. Bonjour, je m'appelle Julian. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm running for SSMU president. I'm a professional bilingual mental health counselor at Kids Health Home and a first-year student in law. Next year will be my McGill. I'm the current union president for Kids Help Homes Montreal Counselors and SSMU's mental health advocacy coordinator. And I'm here because SSMU can do better. SSMU needs to do better. SSMU needs to care for its students first, to put people before politics. La plateforme inclut, entre autres choses, le soutien à l'accessibilité linguistique, l'établissement d'un service qui serait dédié à traduire tous les documents, sites et formes de l'AUM en français, entre autres langues. I'll increase smooth transparency by having a transcription tasked with writing full transcripts of our recorded meetings. That way we can search this transcript in the future for what people said, because we'll actually know and have written down what people said. And lastly, I would fill the food desert. As per McGill's 5-year plan, I'll finalize the plans for SMU Cafeteria by working with SMU's building management team and in collaboration with McGill's Kitchen.
We'll now have Risan give her 1 minute introduction.
Thank you very much, Jalen. Can I begin at any time?
No. Yeah, you can.
Thank you. Hello, bonjour. I'm Roseanne Wright, and I'm so excited to be a candidate for your SMU president. I am the current Student Rights and Advocacy Commissioner at SMU, as well as the Black Affairs Commissioner and External Affairs Commissioner. And I also currently serve as the Faculty of Arts Senator for the SMU Senate Caucus and the McGill University Senate. I have a record of effective advocacy at both SMU and McGill and creating institutional change to support all students. My platform emphasizes student support and long-term institutional change. And one of the key things that I will be working on is ensuring that we bolster student support with immediate impact initiatives, including the creation of a Pay What You Can SMU groceries program, creating bursaries for upgrades to high-speed internet, and other health and financial security initiatives. I look forward to making SMU a better place for you and that serves you better. Let's get SMU right. Vote Roseanne Wright for SMU president.
Thank you, Roseanne. And then finally, Brian, if you'd like to make your opening statement.
Merci. Tout d'abord, merci aux élections SMU d'avoir organisé ces débats. My name is Brian Baraga, and I'm running to be your SMU president. Over the past 5 years, I've had the privilege of serving the McGill student body in a variety of roles. As a student spearheading the successful push for a fall reading break, as an arts and science senator, as a member of the Legislative Council and Board of Directors, as the 2019-2020 SMU president, and as an organizer with Divest McGill and the McGill Student Union Democratization Initiative. Now more than ever, it is clear that our student unions are broken. Our university doesn't give a damn about us, and our landlords raise rents for mediocre housing year after year. That's why I'm running to democratize SMU and faculty associations, to democratize university governance, and to create a McGill tenant union. We can have a student union that works for us, a university run by us, the McGill community, and community-driven neighborhoods formed by us. Let's stop the bullshit together. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we'll now move on to the question from the current president, which is, as the SMU's representative on the McGill Senate and McGill Board of Governors, what are your top 3 advocacy priorities? And the order that we'll take for this will be Roseanne, Brian, and then Julian.
Thank you very much for that excellent question. I'm currently sitting on the McGill University Senate, and I will continue that work and also push it even further. So what we're currently looking at are academic accommodations for vulnerable students as we move into a full return to on-campus activities, and that's one of my first priorities. My second priority is bolstering support for the OSD, the Office for Students with Disabilities, ensuring that we have paid note takers, increased resources there as well. And my other priority for the McGill Senate and the McGill Board of Governors is amplifying student voice overall, ensuring that we have increased representation of students in decision-making on the decisions that affect them. So I think my first and top 3 advocacy priorities are protecting vulnerable students, bolstering resources for physical health and mental health and wellness of students through mental health OSD support and things like that and of that nature, and those different resources for students. And then the third being, as I mentioned before, increasing representation and student support. Thank you.
Brian, you now have a minute.
Great, thank you for the question. As a person who sat on the McGill Senate for 2 years and on the Board of Governors for 1 year as SMU's representative, I've seen how debates go in those positions, and very often administrators already have their minds made up. What I believe is necessary in order to achieve student priorities is building up the student collective power necessary to force the university into a position in order to make advocacy priorities happen. These priorities include divestment. There's currently an occupation of the administration building calling for divestment, as well as for democratization of the university, one of my key platform pillars. In addition, McGill student services are very underfunded. We've seen long wait times at the Student Wellness Hub, crumbling infrastructure in athletics and recreation, and just a general lack of funding from the McGill University central budget. So as president, it would be my top priorities to advocate for all of these and ensure that students get what they need and deserve. Thank you.
And Julian, if you want to give your 1 minute response.
Merci, Jalil. Donc, comme un premier point pour répondre à la question, je commencerai avec l'accessibilité linguistique. C'est important que tous les étudiants se sentent confortables à participer dans ces rencontres dans la langue de leur choix, comme elle est protégée dans la Constitution. Nous manquons une grande partie de notre population si nous n'avons pas la participation francophone. Second, transparency. As per my transcription service suggestion, we're going to have to make the McGill Senate and Board of Directors a place where all students feel like they can understand what's going on and a place that they can hold their peers accountable. And transcription services will target directly that. Lastly, I would want this place, both Board of Directors, but especially Senate, to be a kind of community, a place where students feel that they can listen and care for each other. And bolstering the social committee's mandate to include casual staff and have networking events will do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Risan, if you want to give your... Oh, wait, sorry. I am confused. We are now moving on to the discussion. So everyone is going to pose one question to the two other opponents, and then they will have 1 minute to answer, and then the person who posed the question gets a 30-second response. So we'll start with Brian. Brian, do you want me to read out your question, or would you like to read it?
I can read it, and then if you can post it in the chat for everyone to see, that'd be great.
Unfortunately, Zoom does not let you copy paste in the chat, is what I have learned today. So I can read it very slowly, but that is the max I can do.
Okay. I mean, I copy pasted it when I sent it over to you, so I don't mind reading it again.
Yeah,
no
sorry,
worries.
my apologies.
So my question is, what, if any, structural issues do you see within student government at McGill? What solutions do you have to address these problems? And specifically, what actions would you take, if any, if elected as president, to enact those changes?
Julian, would you like to answer first?
So I think that one structural issue that currently exists at SSMU is that it's very easy for us to lose touch and connection with each other, to demonize the problems that are going on, and to villainize the people behind the politics. And what this does is it creates an atmosphere so tense that we're tempted to take down everything and rebuild from the ground up. But we don't ask hard questions, like understanding why people do the things that they do, sitting down and having difficult conversations. There is a need to listen to each other more, and that need comes from founding a basis of trust and relationships within SSMU. My platform addresses that need by creating meaningful opportunities for connection through the social community. And I would love to see a kind of SSMU that is ready to listen to each other before taking any steps. Thank you.
Risan, you now have a minute. Would you like me to repeat the question before you begin?
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
What, if any, structural issues do you see within student government at McGill? And what solutions do you have to address those problems? Specifically, what actions would you take, if elected, to enact these changes?
Thank you very much for that excellent and important question. That is absolutely something that I've taken into account in building my platform, and it's in the foundations of my priority for equity and governance at the SSMU. The structural and systemic issues that I can identify include structural and systemic misogyny and racism that runs rampant within our student government and is frankly unacceptable and makes the student government unsafe for all of its students. I have built my platform on concrete actions, including the development of an equity, diversity, and inclusion plan and also a comprehensive HR and governance review at the SMU for a new conflict resolution process and complaints process and bolstering the student support within it. Thank you so much for that question, and I look forward to hopefully enacting those changes if I'm elected as your president.
Brian, you now have a 30-second response.
Thank you. In my time between when I got out of student office, I worked on the McGill Student Union Democratization Initiative policy. And in it, which passed with overwhelming student support, there's a clear plan endorsed by the student body to remove power from executives and return it back to student democratic assemblies. I believe that this will fundamentally deal with a lot of the problems that we see today, and I invite folks to take a look at my platform and see the plan as to how we're going to deal with the structural issues at SMU and inter-student unions. Thank you.
Your time is now elapsed. Thank you. Julian, you may now pose your question to the other candidates.
You're muted.
And let's restart that. We've seen over the years a number of headlines in the newspapers that reveal something to SMU. For example, in September 2021, Sexism and Silence in SMU. In March 2020, how SMU service abolished democracy. Or in April 10th, SMU Board of Directors assisting SMU's repression of student voices. One of the things that these headlines highlight for me is that SMU exactly needs to be able to recognize when they've made a mistake and when they're wrong. Own up to that and change. My question for you is, how do you recognize when you've made a mistake and when you've done something wrong? And how do you own up to it?
We'll start with a 1-minute response from Brian.
That's a really good question. I think it's, over the past few years in my time in student government, I've taken a lot of time to reflect on the different decisions that I've made and the people that I've had the opportunity to speak to about the effect that my leadership has provided on certain platforms and certain issues. I think that the marker for failure or for unsuccess is when certain policies that one has created or enacted doesn't reach the needed goal or doesn't eradicate the problem in the way that you would have wanted to. And unfortunately, in student government, a lot of people make promises that they are unable to keep simply because of red tape, of bureaucracy, or the entrenched power structures that prevent them from enacting these crucial changes. So I've taken a lot of time personally to reflect on the past few years in student government, and I believe that my platform will create a system in which these changes are made for the success of students.
Your time has now elapsed. Risan, you now have a minute to respond to the question.
Thank you, Jalen. Is there any way that you might be able to repeat the question for me?
Yes, if I may condense it a little bit, the question was, how do you own up to your mistakes and how do you kind of deal with that, admitting that you have made a mistake?
Thank you very much for that question. It's a great one. When I've made a mistake, the first step is always to own up to it, to admit that I've been wrong, and to be vocal about that, to be transparent about that. But it goes beyond just saying that I've done something wrong. It's also important to me to take accountability for my actions, and that includes rectifying whatever the issue is or the mistake that I've made. So I take it a step further than simply saying I've done something wrong or owning up to that mistake. I'm proactive in attempting to fix it and rectify the situation in any way that I can. And what I've mentioned about accountability is a key value in my platform and something that I'm committed to should I be elected to serve as your SMU president.
And then Julian, you get a 30-second response.
Thank you, Jalen. Thank you, Brian and Risan, for those insightful answers. Brian, you mentioned that failure is when you don't reach your desired goal. I'd be curious to know, how do you know if your goals are the right ones or the wrong ones? And how do you recognize if a goal might be the wrong one in that case? Your answer resonates with the definition of an apology that I think of, which is just owning up to the mistake and then being ready to move on to it. And so I thank you and wish you luck.
Okay, then we'll move on to our last discussion question. Risan, if you want to pose a question to your fellow candidates.
Yes, thank you. My question is as follows. Do you recognize the structural and systemic marginalization of groups of students, including women, gender minorities, and racialized students at the SMU? And do you acknowledge that SMU leadership has a responsibility to address these structural and systemic issues at the SMU? Do you agree that student safety for all students, including students that identify as members of these groups, is a priority?
Okay, so we'll first have Julian respond. You have a minute.
In short, yes. Je pense que la présidence en particulier, en tant que quelques pouvoirs, mais aussi toutes les différentes personnes en position de pouvoir, ont le fardeau de porter exemple à ce que ça veut dire d'être dans une classe sécuritaire et de, en fait, inviter les différents criticismes. It's important to listen and get feedback from the community, and especially from those marginalized groups. I know that I don't have the experiences that everybody else has. Nobody does. But what we can do is listen deeply to those experiences and understand things from perspectives that we never knew. And that, as a counselor, is what I'm committed to doing. Understanding people on their own terms. That's what I do as a counselor, and that's what I'm ready to do as a president, to be able to address these issues first.
Thank you, Brian. You now have a minute to respond.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, it's an issue, and it's an ongoing issue. You know, in my year, I had a fantastic vice president of university affairs, Madeline Wilson, one of the best people I've ever had the chance to work with. Unfortunately, when she tried to stand up for the Indigenous Affairs Commissioner at the time, who was working on the Change the Name campaign, she was tone policed by the Legislative Council. I didn't have enough votes to be able to fight it, and that went on. Later, the board of directors of the SSMU suspended her without pay for weeks after she spoke up against her mistreatment. And again, I didn't have the power to be able to stop that as an individual. And I think that what you've said, Roseanne, and that is abundantly clear now, is that there are structural issues within the SMU that perpetuate these systems of oppression. I had to take a step back from the SMU myself after my year because it was too much. But I think that within the platform that I've been able to concoct, these will really deal with these systems of oppression and ensure that the SMU is a safe place for all students. Thank you.
Your time has elapsed now. Thank you. Risan, you have a 30-second response.
Thank you, and I thank you both for your answers and for recognizing that these issues are a priority. And I would like to share with all of you that I am the candidate who has included this priority inside my platform and has actually made it a priority with concrete objectives and goals to be implemented in order to address these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We'll move on now to a question from the SSMUnion. Seeing as we hope to conclude collective bargaining before the next executive term begins, how do you plan to move forward in guiding management's relationship with the SSMUnion once our collective agreement has been signed and ratified? So for this question, we'll go Julian and Risan and Brian.
Julian, I think that the first thing that a president would have to do is, frankly, understand the collective bargaining agreement. I myself am currently the union president for mental health counselors, and we're going into a negotiation to be able to draft a collective agreement. And I can't tell you how important it is to pay attention to those things. It's important because the collective agreement is an agreement. An agreement at its heart is a promise. It's a promise to be able to take care of each other and take care of the collective. And moving forward is to understand the agreement and then understand the people and what that means behind it. I'd be happy to meet one-on-one or via email as part of right now my candidacy, but also as part of my presidency, to understand the people behind the agreement and the promises and what that entails. Thank you.
Risan.
Thank you for this excellent question. I am currently an employee of the SMU that the SMUnion represents, and I am so pleased that you're moving to conclude the bargaining process. And I have every intention of guiding the management relationship with the SMUnion as something that is transparent, that is accessible, that honors the agreement that we've made, and that ensures that you, as SMUnion representatives and as members of this union are happy, taken care of, that you're in a safe and healthy environment, and that all of the things that you have put forward in this agreement will be taken care of, will be enacted and respected by all of the executive and all of the management. And I hope to lead a relationship that is a good one, that is a transparent one, and one that has open communication going forward.
Finally, Brian.
Thank you. Personally, I'm really happy to hear that collective bargaining is being completed. It was near the end of my term as president when this union was created, and I had hoped to be able to be part of the negotiations a little more. Unfortunately, my term ended, but fundamentally, it's really important to be able to have that collective agreement that guarantees respect, pay, and benefits, and other provisions in the workplace that are really important. I think moving forward with management, I think it's really important to make sure that as the executives, we don't just follow the letter of the agreement, but also the spirit of it as well. And with lots of other unions, particularly at McGill definitely takes that hardline stance with, this is exactly what it says, therefore we're going to follow it. So I think in the future, the sort of relationship I would want to have with this union is one of collaboration and ensuring that student workers, members of this union, have all of the resources and support that they need from the SMU, and that any disagreements or issues that might come up are dealt with, not necessarily using the collective bargaining process, but in a way that can resolve the issue before it gets to that point.
Your time has elapsed. So we'll now move on to questions that were submitted.
So for this version, since there were pointed questions asked to each candidate, we're going to actually allow each candidate to answer these questions first. So we'll start with Julian. So Julian, do you think that investing in a year-round retreat cottage for clubs and services is the best use of student fees when now more than ever, a large portion of the student body face financial precarity?
I'm so glad to ever raise that question. Thank you for bringing it up, because I think it's the thing that might be most misunderstood in my platform. If you take a look at the platform, English or French version, you'll see that my proposal is to put together a board, a committee underneath the board of directors, whose role will be this very question alongside other important questions. For example, is this something that's financially viable? Is this something that does take away from our other initiatives? Is this something that would help at the end of the day? And I would create a committee that would be able to answer those key questions. Now, is investing in it just a good idea in the first place? That aside, the place that this initiative comes from is in recognizing that the main contact that SMU has with students is through its clubs and its faculties. And so what SMU needs to do is find innovative, ambitious ways, clubs and faculties, to make that connection. That's the only way that we're going to be able to get to students. It's if we get to where they already are. And those clubs and faculties are at the heart of what they do, and this is part of a larger picture of supporting them. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. Now, Brian, onto your question. During your campaign for the 2019-2020 SMU presidency, you presented a long and detailed platform of promises. Now looking back, which campaign promises can you confidently state you have fulfilled during your term in office?
Thank you to whoever answered that question. First of all, I just want to preface my answer with the fact that our general manager resigned 3 months into my term. And for the following 6 months after that, I had to take on running the day-to-day operations of the SSMU, which prevented me from carrying out as much of my platform as I would have hoped to. But that being said, being in the role, it's more about placing the seeds that will allow these different campaign priorities to happen. And in certain situations, I made promises to make things happen within my term, and in others to make sure that was an ongoing thing. In terms of concrete things that I was able to accomplish, we were able to get a fall reading break, not by fall 2020 as I had hoped, but this past semester in fall 2021. From the top levels of McGill University's governance, I advocated for divestment, and I continue to advocate for student priorities, both in the McGill Senate and Board of Governors. Thank you.
We will now move on to Risan's question. A lot of candidates have promised increased transparency over the years, and you have named it as one of your platform's values. How do you believe your policy reviews will accomplish this? You have 1 minute. Feel free to start whenever.
You're muted, Risan.
Thank you for pointing that out, and thank you for that question. I'll approach this question in two ways. The first aspect of transparency looks at the transparency of the SMU and what it's actually doing for students and the work of the SMU. And I'll address that through making things more transparent with the creation of the SMU Commissioners Roundtable, as commissioners actually carry out most of the student-facing work for the SMU. And I'll also be increasing transparency for all of the advocacy initiatives that the SMU currently works on by creating the online interactive advocacy platform, which will host all of the current and ongoing advocacy initiatives of the SMU in order for there to be transparency about that. Finally, looking at the policy review to increase transparency, that's why I'm hoping to do a full HR restructuring and reviewing some of those board of director policies and legislative council policies, and looking at where we can actually increase the way that students know about processes and the way that students know about different infractions that are happening within the SMU, while of course respecting confidentiality where necessary.
Your time has now elapsed. Thank you. So we'll move on to the next question.
And the next online question is, what do you think are the roles and responsibilities of the board of directors within the SMU? If elected president, do you anticipate pushing for changes to this body? In terms of order, we'll do reverse what we just did. So Rizan, Brian, and then Julian.
Thank you. Can I just ask that you allow the screen to take up the full question just so that I can read it if possible? If not, if you could repeat the question.
Yeah, do you not see is the slide not visible?
It's a bit cut off, so I can only see half of it, unfortunately.
Oh, that's very odd.
I think that's something that generally has to change on your individual view, but we can repeat it for you.
Thank you.
The question is, what do you think are the roles and responsibility of the board of directors within the SSMU? If elected president, do you anticipate pushing for changes to this body?
Thank you very much. I absolutely do think that the board of directors holds quite a lot of power and responsibility within the organization. In addition to the normal responsibilities of board of directors, including fiduciary duty, there is currently responsibility with the board of directors to hold the executive accountable. And I see that this is a place where we need a lot of change, and I do certainly anticipate making changes to this body moving forward in the interest of students and in the interest of running a safe and equitable institution and organization. Thank you. If I do have time, I'd also add that I do anticipate making more changes to the policies of the board of directors as well, to do that review as it pertains to the governance of the organization and the equity considerations there. Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to Brian.
Yeah, well, the roles and responsibilities of the board of directors are to manage the legal, financial, and operational capacities of the SSMU. I believe that, along with the other parts of my platform, that structural change is needed, and the board of directors certainly isn't immune to that. In my vision of what this would look like, instead of having executives, legislative counselors, and others large on the board, there'd be representatives from all of the different faculty level student associations representing all student interests on the board. And that way, collectively, they can hold SSMU accountable as a federation of students built by students, rather than the top-down approach that we see today. I also think, as Rosanna rightly pointed out, that there seems to be a failure in the board of directors holding executives accountable. And with these structural changes, this would ensure that there's true separation between the board of directors and the executive, and that there's the will to hold the executives and other employees accountable. Thank you.
Your time has now elapsed. Julian, you now have a minute.
Thank you, and thanks for the really great answers. I think Rasan and Brian bring up some very strong points. Yes, the board of directors' job is to take up the management, business, legal, financial affairs. But it also has a certain symbolism to it that I think Brian alluded to. It is one of the highest decision-making bodies, but also one of the least populated decision-making bodies. And so I think that as part of taking a look at the board of directors, a key look at its functions in terms of not just who it's made up of, but also what it represents and how it is needed. Ryan brought up some ideas about bringing in people from different backgrounds. Rasan highlighted the importance of holding SSMU executives accountable. And I think that the thing that I would add is transparency to all the McGill students, namely through transcription of a lot of those meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Now we have time for audience questions. Galen, if you'd like to.
Yes, so we do have a hand raised. If you want to unmute yourself, you may state your question.
Yeah, thank you. So I have a question for all of the candidates about some of your answers you've just given about the board of directors. So some of you have made mention of the board of directors not being very populated and potentially adding more members, whereas other people have mentioned removing executives from the board and adding a broader coalition from other student groups. I'm wondering if you guys could talk a little bit more about how you think this is a feasible plan in terms of there not being a disconnect between the top executives and the ongoing projects within the SSMU, and also speaking to the issue of breaches of confidentiality. So as you know, this year, the board of directors has had a number of issues with confidential information being leaked to student newspapers and whatnot. And as this number of people on the board expands, so does the risk of confidentiality breaches. So what do you think about that? And do you think that these suggestions you've made are actually feasible?
Thank you, Charlotte. So we recognize there was a lot of material there, so feel free to respond to what you believe was the most pertinent. We'll start with Rasan.
I think I may need just a little bit of a review of the question, if possible.
That's no problem. I'll try to condense it. So I hope I got this right, Charlotte. Charlotte brought up two things. First off, do you think it is feasible to so radically change the board of directors makeup, essentially, because there is talk of both removing and adding people to it? And secondly, they asked what you think about the leaks that have come from the board of directors and the transparency around that.
All right, thank you very much. So regarding the first point of the question, which has to do with adding representatives to the board of directors and also removing the executive, I do feel that having a representative board of directors is incredibly important, whether that comes from having an increased number or volume of people represented on the board, or whether that comes from having representation of student groups in other ways, is something that would affect how feasible this sort of plan is. I do agree with, I think, the question mentioned that adding a lot of people to the board so drastically would increase the capacity for leaks, potential leaks of breaches of confidentiality. I do recognize that as a potential issue should this be implemented. And I think any change to the board of directors would have to have a lot of consultation and would have to be very mindful and cognizant of all the related and potential issues with it before making any sort of structural change. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Julian. You have 1 minute.
For the question, in terms of addressing the idea of feasibility, the thing that I'll emphasize is that, and this goes for any really approach, I want it to be an informed decision that we'll be making. And so what that will involve is having very strong heart-to-heart conversations with the people who would be involved in making any changes when it comes to the board of directors and largely other parts of SSMU. The emphasis that I put in my answer really was on the symbolic importance of the board of directors, and then how that reflects on what SMU is about, and that we need to be constant and mindful of. When it comes to the leaks, I think there's a question that's underlying, which is why? Why are there leaks in the first place? And I think that it comes down to this idea of being able to form a community where we trust each other, where we're able to talk in confidence and communicate. And that's what my platform is about, and that's what I'm about. It's about communicating and trusting each other. Thank you.
Now we'll have our last response from Brian.
Yeah, thank you very much for your answer, Charlotte, and congratulations on your election for VP Finance at the AUS. Regarding your question, I think it's important to, I guess, consider the context first of where these leaks come from. Is it to protect one's interest, or is it to call out wrongdoings that are happening within the SSMU that would otherwise go unnoticed by the student body? Within that context, I think that they should definitely be treated differently, and that people who speak out and whistleblow against wrongdoing in the SSMU should not be punished for doing so. But regarding, I guess, more radical changes to the board of directors, it's clear that the board of directors and the current structure of the SMU doesn't work the way that it needs to. And the radical change is necessary in order to be able to get it to a place where it can work and function properly. And with my idea of having students from all different faculties participate in the board of directors, we'd be able to integrate day-to-day students and take new opinions and make people care about their student society again. And that's what I hope to foster as SMU president.
Okay, so I recognize there's some hands up, but we're going to take one last question from the chat, and then we're going to have final statements. We recognize we're over time. We thank you guys so much for sticking around and making this such a great debate. So the last question is, what relationship do you see between the board of directors and the SSMUnion moving forward, especially considering the only real point of tension is their desire for a seat on the board? And we'll start with Julian.
Merci pour votre question. En effet, je pense que la relation entre l'agence gouvernementale de l'AUM et le syndicat de l'AUM doit être un qui est rempli de communication, doit être un avec transparence et honnêteté. Et donc, avec ces idées, ce que je suggérerais, c'est que si nous pouvons regarder à ajouter un représentant à la partie du board, ça serait quelque chose que moi je serais content de regarder ensemble. Mais même si ce n'est pas possible à la fin de la journée, je veux que le syndicat comprenne que la priorité, lorsque ça vient à notre relation et celle avec le board, d'avoir une communication qui est honnête, où on sent comme si on pouvait partager nos opinions et nous serons entendus. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you. We will then have Brian. You have a minute.
Merci pour la question. Je pense que la relation entre le conseil d'administration et le syndicat de l'AUM is of the utmost importance. And like I mentioned earlier, it's about creating a structure and a system and a culture of trust. And I believe that if this is a demand that the SSMUnion is asking for, that it should be granted. Worker-run democracy is very important, and as a student union that is composed of its students, its workers should have a voice into how they're managed and to the decisions that affect their day-to-day well-being. So I guess and simply, they should have a seat on the board of directors if that's something that they would like, and to continue to promote the culture of collaboration rather than one of that of an adversary with one another. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Risan for the final answer.
Thank you very much. I wholeheartedly support and agree with the idea of making sure that we have those who work within the organization, who carry out the work of the organization, involved in the governance of the organization. And so to answer the first part of the question, I see the relationship between the executive under my leadership as president, should I be elected, and with the SSMUnion as one of continued collaboration, communication, and governance together to see the SSMU become the place that it should be and that students deserve. And if this is a demand and a request of the SSMUnion, then if elected, I certainly would work to see that realized. Thank you very much for your question.
Okay, thank you guys so much for your very detailed and thoughtful answer. You have 1 minute for a closing statement. We'll go the opposite direction of our last question, so we'll start with Risan.
Thank you very much. Thank you all so much for your time this evening and for listening to me discuss the platform points that I've worked so hard on that I hope that I can bring to fruition for you. The key priorities of my platform are advocacy, amplifying student voice, equity and governance to address structural issues and create lasting, long-term change at the SSMU, and leadership and support to address immediate issues of health and financial security for students. Some of my key platform points and key initiatives include the creation of the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Plan at the SSMU. It includes bolstered student support through initiatives addressing health and financial security, such as the creation of a Pay What You Can grocery program. And it includes the creation of a long-term strategic framework that looks at the advocacy objectives of the society in the areas of advocacy for student wellness and for financial security for students at McGill and with the government. I hope that we can work together to make a SSMU that serves you better. Let's get SSMU right. Mettons le EUM.
Your time has now elapsed. We will now hear from Brian Braga.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank my fellow candidates for sharing their thoughts on their vision for SSMU's future. I believe what sets me apart from the other candidates running for president is my previous track record of success championing student priorities, my experience advocating for students and fighting back against the McGill administration, and my unwavering commitment to serve students, whether that's inside or outside of student government. What drew me to step to student advocacy and activism in the first place, it was feeling so powerless and so small against the powers that be in my first year at McGill, and my desire to prevent others from feeling the same way I did. My vision for SSMU is not to turn it into a leader-less organization, but an organization that is leader-full. I hope that I've earned your vote to be one of those leaders. Merci de votre considération.
And Julian for the final statement.
Thank you to the co-presidents for their presentation, as well to the questions from the audience. The question that I'd like to put out there for everybody to ask themselves is, what does SSMU need most right now? The answer that I will suggest is that SSMU needs to be a place where we care. A place where we care for each other, for our employees, for our community. The thing that sets me apart as a candidate is that I have a professional ability, mandate to care as a counselor. And whether that be enacted by filling the food desert with a SSMU cafeteria, creating a green room within campus for students to relax on, or bolstering the arts in the building, there are lots of ways that we can learn to care for each other. But caring is going to have to go beyond the platform. It's going to involve listening. Thank you for listening. For Julian Guidante. Thank you.
Okay, so our sincere thanks to everyone who attended, to all of the candidates. We thank you for making this a very fantastic debate. Thanks from me and Anthony. And we really also appreciate you guys staying over time with us. We know this went a bit long, but we really want to make sure all the candidates are able to share their platform with you guys and really attest to the questions that you guys all had. So thank you so much.